They said the Rutherfords were blessed, but nobody mentioned the basement, or the screams that sounded like children who never learned sunlight. Providence, Rhode Island, a winter so cruel it cracked stone and bone. And inside the grand Rutherford estate, a secret colder than the frost. The villagers admired the Rutherfords, perfect family, perfect wealth, perfect lies. Because every night, when the candles dimmed, Mrs. Rutherford carried a lantern down those basement stairs, slow, heavy, afraid. Not of the dark, but of what lived in it. People said the Rutherfords lost their newborn twins years ago, a tragedy, a funeral, a pair of tiny graves marked with lilies. But no one ever saw the bodies, and the servants whispered truths that made blood turn to ice. They said the twins were alive. They said the twins were hidden. They said the twins had never once touched daylight. The basement door was always locked, iron thick enough to hold a beast, bolts that sank deep like the family's guilt, and a smell, rot, moist, wrong, like something that breathed but should not. One servant swore she heard voices down there, 2 little voices, soft, singing lullabies no child should know, songs about hunger, about loneliness, about walls that whispered back. Another servant claimed she caught a glimpse through the keyhole, just one glimpse, one eye, huge, black, reflecting the lantern light like an animal's. She quit that same night, packed her things, left without a coin, and refused to speak again. But the Rutherfords never flinched, never cracked, never admitted. They simply said, "Some doors are not meant to open." And everyone agreed, until the night a traveler came knocking, a historian from Boston, curious, too curious. He asked questions about the twins, about the basement, about the screams people pretended not to hear. Mr. Rutherford smiled politely, but his hands trembled, his candle flickered, and beneath the floorboards, a soft tapping responded. 2 tiny taps, as if saying, "We hear you." That night the traveler was invited to stay. He accepted. He should not have, because the twins were listening, waiting, hungry. And tonight, they wanted company. The traveler thought he heard footsteps in the basement, but the Rutherfords were all upstairs, and the lantern was moving on its own. Night settled over the estate like a curse. Wind moaned through cracked shutters. The halls breathed cold, and the traveler, Jonathan Hale, felt watched. He tried to sleep in the guest room, but sleep refused him. The floor creaked, the walls groaned, and somewhere below, something whispered rhythms only the dead should hum. Jonathan sat up, listened. The sound came again, soft, repeating, almost playful. He followed it, down the staircase, past portraits whose eyes seemed too alive, until he reached the hallway leading to the basement door. A lantern burned on the floor, not where Mrs. Rutherford had left it, not where any human hand would place it. The flame stretched toward the basement door, as if pulled, as if drawn by tiny breaths on the other side. Jonathan knelt, touched the metal lantern. It was warm, freshly held, but no one had passed him. No one had lit it. He whispered to himself, "It's just the wind." But the wind didn't drag lanterns, and the wind didn't giggle. Yes, a giggle, high, childlike, right beneath his feet. The basement door throbbed, a slow rhythmic thud. 2 beats, always 2, as if in perfect unison. Twin heartbeats calling through wood. Jonathan leaned closer to listen, and the thudding stopped. Silence, sharp as a knife, deep as a grave. Then a tiny hand pressed against the other side of the door. Small fingers, 5 of them. But the shadow stretched far too long, longer than any child's hand should. Jonathan stumbled back, heart slamming, breath shredded. The hand slid upward on the wood like it was searching for a crack, a weakness, a way out. He backed away farther, but the house backed away with him. Lights dimming, shadows lengthening, the temperature dropping as if someone exhaled frost into the hall. Then Mr. Rutherford's voice broke the silence, but it wasn't steady, it wasn't calm. "Step away from that door," he said, not as a warning, but as a plea. Jonathan turned, and that's when he saw it. Fear, raw, human, in a man who swore his house held no secrets. If only that were true. If you want next, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what those twins do when the door finally opens. Mr. Rutherford said the twins were dead, but the servants said they buried something else, something that moved. Jonathan froze at the sound of Mr. Rutherford's voice. The man's face was pale, paler than candle wax. His eyes glimmered with the terror of someone who already knew what waited behind the door. "Step away," Mr. Rutherford repeated, but his voice cracked. It wasn't a command, it was desperation. Jonathan obeyed, but slowly. Curiosity tugged harder than caution. And that's when he noticed it. Mrs. Rutherford standing in the shadows of the hall, lantern in hand, tears shining like broken glass. She whispered, "They're awake tonight." Jonathan's stomach dropped. "Who?" he asked. Mrs. Rutherford's hand trembled so violently the lantern's flame danced like a trapped soul. "The twins," she said. "They know you're here." The basement door rattled behind them, a sharp tug, like tiny hands pulling from the inside, hungry, impatient. Mr. Rutherford rushed forward and slammed his shoulder against the door. Bolts shook, wood groaned, something on the other side whimpered, not in pain, but in excitement. Jonathan stepped back. "What did you lock down there?" he asked. Neither parent answered, but someone else did. An old servant, gray hair, shaking hands, peeked from the top of the stairs. Her voice cracked like brittle bone. "You should have left this house before sunset, sir." Jonathan turned. "Tell me what's going on." She hesitated, glanced at the Rutherfords, then spoke anyway. Quiet, broken, damned. "The twins didn't die," she whispered. "We buried empty coffins." Jonathan felt the floor tilt beneath him. "Why empty?" he asked. The servant closed her eyes, as if reliving a nightmare she never escaped. "Because the Rutherfords didn't birth children," she said. "They birthed something else." The parents flinched, guilt twisting their faces like melted wax. Mrs. Rutherford whispered, "They were beautiful at first, until they weren't." The basement door shook suddenly, hard, a violent thud that split the silence wide open. Then a giggle, that same eerie giggle Jonathan had heard through the floorboards. Only now it was louder, closer, almost at the lock. The servant's voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "They've grown, sir." Jonathan stared at the door. Grown into what? he was about to find out. If you want next, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what finally forces its way out of that basement. The Rutherfords didn't try to open the basement door. They tried to run from it, because whatever lived beneath their house had finally learned how to break locks. The hallway trembled with every thud from below. Dust rained from the ceiling. Bolts rattled in their sockets like panicked teeth. And the twins, whatever they were, laughed between the strikes. Jonathan stepped backward until he hit the wall. His pulse hammered so loudly he wondered if the twins could hear it. Mr. Rutherford braced his entire weight against the door. Veins bulged in his neck. Sweat shined on his brow, but each impact pushed him farther back. "They weren't this strong before," he gasped. His voice sounded like a man wrestling with the devil. Mrs. Rutherford grabbed Jonathan's arm. Her fingers were ice. She whispered, "Follow me. We can't hold them tonight." Jonathan resisted. "You want me to run when your children—" "They're not children," she snapped. Her voice cracked, a sound torn from years of silence and shame. Another thud. Wood splintered. A crack ran across the door like a lightning strike. Behind it, breathing. Not human breathing. Wet. Animal. Synchronized. Two lungs inhaling in perfect, terrifying unison. The servant at the staircase made the sign of the cross. "Lord, forgive us. We should have burned the place years ago." Jonathan swallowed hard. "Burned it? Burned them?" She looked at him with hollow eyes. "We tried." Mrs. Rutherford yanked him toward the back corridor. "Move, Jonathan, the moment they get the upper bolt." It happened. A loud metallic snap. The top lock flew across the hall and clanged onto the floor. Silence followed. A suffocating, deadly silence. Then tiny fingers curled through the crack in the wood. Pale. Long. Too long. Bending at angles human bones shouldn't bend. A soft whisper slid through the opening. High. Childlike. Familiar. "Mama?" Mrs. Rutherford choked on a sob. She covered her mouth, but it was too late. The twins heard her. Two sets of eyes pressed against the crack. Black. Reflective. Wide with hunger. Mr. Rutherford shouted, "Go, now!" Jonathan didn't need to be told twice, because the bottom bolt, the last one holding back whatever the twins had become, was starting to turn. If you want next, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes crawling through that widening crack. The last bolt snapped. The door didn't open. It bent, because the twins didn't walk out. They crawled out. The hallway shook as the bottom bolt groaned. Metal screamed. Wood buckled. Jonathan felt the vibration run through the floorboards like a heartbeat that didn't belong to this world. Mr. Rutherford backed away from the door, defeated, terrified, face drained of every drop of hope he once had. "They were born wrong," he whispered. "They were born hungry." The bolt snapped. The door didn't swing. It collapsed inward, falling like a rotted jaw unhinging. Silence. Dense. Thick. Then, a shifting sound. Something dragging. Something soft sliding over stone. A hand emerged first. Small, but wrong. Fingers jointed in two places, curved like hooks. Skin stretched too thin, almost translucent, in the lantern light. Another hand followed, matching, perfectly synchronized. Then the twins came crawling into the hallway, not standing, not stumbling, crawling on all fours, like spiders wearing children's skin. Heads tilted, eyes glossy black, mouths too small but somehow stretching too wide. Jonathan stumbled backward. His breath snapped in his throat. Every instinct screamed, "Run! Don't look back! Run!" Mrs. Rutherford didn't move. She trembled. She whispered their names, names she had once said with love. Anne, Abigail. The twins froze. Their heads twitched, both at the same time, both toward her voice, like predators recognizing a familiar scent. They giggled, a sound so innocent it made the horror worse. Then they scuttled forward faster, much faster. Lantern light flickered in the wind of their movement. Mr. Rutherford lunged in front of his wife. "Stop! Stop, please!" But the twins didn't stop. They didn't understand words anymore. Or maybe they did, and simply didn't care. Jonathan grabbed the old servant and pulled her back. "What do we do?" Her voice shook so hard it barely existed. "You run, boy, and you pray they choose the parents first." The twins were almost on them now, close enough for Jonathan to smell the basement on them. Damp, rot, iron, blood. Mrs. Rutherford covered her face. Mr. Rutherford spread his arms to protect her. And the twins opened their mouths, not to scream, not to speak, but to bite. The twins didn't kill their parents right away. They wanted to play first, and the entire house became their playground. They lunged, fast, blurring, two small bodies moving with inhuman precision. Mr. Rutherford shoved his wife behind him. His scream tore through the hall, half courage, half terror. The first twin hit him in the chest, not heavy, but strong enough to knock him against the wall. Fingers sank into his coat, clawed, tore. The second twin skittered toward Mrs. Rutherford, head jerking in sharp, broken angles, teeth clicking like tiny stones. Jonathan grabbed a fire poker from the wall. He swung, hard. Metal cracked against the floor where the creature had been, but the twin moved sideways, low, spider fast. It hissed at him, a sound that made his skin feel too tight. Mr. Rutherford cried out as the other twin crawled up his chest, hand over hand, elbows bending backward, knees folding the wrong way. It pressed its forehead to his and giggled. Jonathan ran toward them, heart hammering, but the servant grabbed his arm. "Don't!" she hissed. "They mimic affection before the bite." Too late. The twin's mouth opened wide, wider than any jaw should, teeth small but endless, a circle of needles. Mrs. Rutherford screamed, her voice shattered into the freezing air. The twin didn't bite. Not yet. It turned its head toward her scream, slowly, almost thoughtfully, as if deciding which parent to taste first. The second twin crawled onto the ceiling, clinging like an insect, watching from above, saliva dripping in thin strings. Jonathan felt the walls closing in, the lamps flickered, shadows stretched like claws. "We need to escape," he yelled. The servant shook her head. "They won't let us. They stalk. They herd. They corner." Jonathan grabbed her shoulders. "Then where can we run?" Her eyes filled with tears. "There's only one place they fear." Jonathan froze. "The church?" "No," she whispered. A loud crack shook the hallway. Mr. Rutherford collapsed. The twins scuttled down his body, turning toward their mother, toward Jonathan, toward anything that breathed. The servant whispered the one word Jonathan never expected. "The light." The twins hissed, both at once, as if the word itself burned them. Jonathan stared at the lantern in his hand. Light. Fire. Their only chance. and the twins were already crawling toward him. If you want next, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Jonathan finally learns what the twins fear. The twins didn't fear the parents. They didn't fear God. They feared only one thing: light. Because light showed what they truly were. Jonathan lifted the lantern. His hand shook, flame trembling like a nervous heartbeat. The twins hesitated, for the first time. Not because of him, not because of the servant, because of the glow. Their bodies recoiled, spines arching, skin blistering where the light brushed them, steam curling off their arms like burning wax. Jonathan felt hope, small, fragile, spark inside him. The servant whispered, "Told you, they cannot stand the truth of themselves." Mrs. Rutherford didn't move. She stared at her children, her monsters, with silent heartbreak twisting her features. The twin on the ceiling hissed, fingers digging into the wood. Not approaching, not retreating, waiting. The other circled the lantern like a predator trapped by fire. Its eyes were glossy black, reflecting the flame like two cracked mirrors. Jonathan stepped forward, lantern raised, trying to push them back. The creature shrieked, a sound that split the air, sharp as shattering glass. Mrs. Rutherford covered her ears. Mr. Rutherford groaned on the floor, barely conscious. Jonathan shoved the lantern closer. The twin scrambled backward, limbs twisting, body folding flat against the wall as if trying to melt into the shadows. The servant whispered. They were born in darkness, raised in it, fed in it. Light is the only thing that makes them bleed. Jonathan swallowed. If light hurts them, what happens if we use more light? The servant's eyes widened with dangerous hope. You think we can drive them back? Or out, Jonathan said. Another hiss tore through the air. The ceiling twin dropped down, right behind Jonathan. He felt the air shift, cold breath on his neck, claws inches from his spine. The servant screamed, "Turn the lantern, now!" Jonathan spun. The flame washed over the creature's face, and for a split second, the illusion of child shattered. Under the skin, something writhed, something pulsed. The twins weren't malformed humans. They were something grown wrong, something shaped by the dark, something that needed shadows like lungs need air. The creature screeched and flung itself backward, smoking, skin bubbling where the light kissed it. Jonathan knew then, light wasn't just protection, it was a weapon. But the lantern flame was small, too small, and the twins were circling again, faster, angrier, learning. Jonathan whispered to the servant, "We need more light." She nodded. "There's only one place bright enough." Jonathan's voice shook. "Where?" "The attic, the sun lamp." The twins heard her. Both heads snapped toward the stairs, and they moved first. If you want next, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Jonathan races the twins to the attic. The twins didn't just chase them, they raced them, because the attic held the one thing that could kill them. Jonathan bolted toward the staircase, lantern swinging, flame shaking, the servant close behind him, Mrs. Rutherford dragging her half-conscious husband. Every step groaned like it wanted to warn the house, "They're coming!" Behind them, scuttling, fast, sharp, the sound of small limbs hitting wood at terrifying speed. Jonathan didn't dare look back, but he could feel them. Two shadows gliding through the hall, two breaths rising in perfect, monstrous unison. They reached the staircase. The servant gasped, Hurry! The attic hatch is at the very top. Jonathan climbed, skipping steps, heart pounding like a war drum. Mrs. Rutherford sobbed as she pulled her husband up. He slipped. She dragged harder, her love the only strength she had left. The twins reached the bottom of the stairs. They didn't climb. They crawled up the banister, silent, effortless, bodies bending sideways like broken marionettes. Jonathan saw them, his blood iced. "Move!" he shouted. The servant screamed, "They're faster on the rails! Keep going!" Up, up, up. The stairs felt endless, narrow, tight, a funnel leading straight into either salvation or slaughter. One twin lunged halfway up the railing. Its fingers scraped Jonathan's boot. He kicked back, barely missed. The lantern flame wavered, almost died. Jonathan cupped a hand around it, gasping, "Don't go out now! Not now!" The servant cried, "Almost there! Pull the cord!" Jonathan reached the attic hatch. A rope dangled. He yanked it. The hatch creaked open. A ladder folded down. Dust rained onto their heads. He climbed into the attic, dark but wide, but empty. He reached back and grabbed the servant's hand, pulled her up, then Mrs. Rutherford, then her husband, half conscious, bleeding from the scalp. The twins were nearly there. Their hands gripped the top steps. Their heads emerged, eyes glowing like wet obsidian. Jonathan grabbed the ladder, tried to pull it up, but the twins grabbed the bottom rung with impossible strength. They hissed, teeth flashing, muscles twitching under stretched skin. The servant's voice cracked. "Turn on the sun lamp, now!" Jonathan dropped the lantern and sprinted across the attic, over boxes, over old trunks, toward a dusty wooden table. A massive brass lamp sat on it, a relic, a monster in its own right. But when lit, it produced blinding, searing, daylight-bright flame, the only thing the twins feared. Jonathan grabbed the crank, hands shaking, sweat dripping. Behind him, the twins began pulling the ladder down. He heard their giggles. He cranked the lamp. It sputtered once, twice, a flicker. Jonathan screamed, "Come on!" And the attic filled with light. If you want next, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what the light finally does to the twins. The sun lamp didn't just hurt the twins. It revealed them. And what they truly were was far worse than anything born human. The attic exploded with light, blinding, white, hot. A false sunrise igniting in the darkness. Jonathan shielded his eyes. The servant fell to her knees. Mrs. Rutherford cried out, half grief, half relief. The twins shrieked, not like children, not like animals, like something ancient being dragged into the world against its will. Their skin blistered instantly, pale flesh bubbling like boiling milk, veins glowing through their arms, black, twisting, moving. They let go of the ladder, bodies convulsing, spines snapping backward into grotesque arches. Jonathan cranked the lamp higher, more light, more heat. The twins writhed on the attic floor, their small hands pounding the boards, not in pain, in fury. Their shadows peeled off the floor, separating from their bodies, turning into long, spidery silhouettes that moved on their own. The servant screamed, "Shadows! Don't let the shadows touch you!" Jonathan stumbled back. The shadows slithered toward him, fast, sharp, hungry. He shoved a trunk in front of him. The shadows recoiled from the lamplight, sizzling like oil on a skillet. Mrs. Rutherford crawled toward her children, sobbing. They weren't supposed to be like this. They were born at night. The midwife said they didn't cry. We didn't know. We didn't know. Mr. Rutherford reached for her with a shaking hand. They were ours, Emily, but they weren't human. The twins twisted on the floor, their faces half melted, eyes boiling, teeth lengthening into jagged spires. One hissed through bubbling lips, "Mama!" The word wasn't a plea, it was a threat. Jonathan grabbed the lamp base and angled it downward. The beam slammed into the twins like a holy blade. Smoke rose from their bodies, skin peeling in ribbons. Their shadows shrank, jerking like dying spiders. The twins screamed louder, claws leaving gouges in the attic boards as they tried to crawl away, toward the dark corners, toward any scrap of shadow. Jonathan stepped forward. More light, more pressure, more burning. He whispered, "I'm sorry." Mrs. Rutherford screamed as the twins' bodies convulsed one last time, jerking, twitching, then collapsing into a pile of steaming, shriveled husks. The attic went silent, but the light flickered, once, twice, and Jonathan realized too late, the shadows hadn't died with the bodies. They were hiding, waiting, regrouping, and the attic was getting darker. If you want next, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what the shadows do when they finally strike back. The twins were gone. The attic was silent, but the shadows never left. Jonathan sank to the floor, hands shaking, lantern smoldering beside him. The sun lamp flickered weakly, casting long angles across the attic. Mrs. Rutherford clutched her husband, both trembling, eyes hollow, breathing shallow, alive, but barely. Jonathan looked down at the remains. Nothing human left, just twisted, steaming husks. Fingers curled into grotesque knots, eyes melted into dark pits. He exhaled, relief crashing over him. It was over. Then a chill crept up his spine. The attic grew colder. The lamp flickered again, though the cord hadn't moved. A shadow twisted. No, not a shadow. It was moving on its own, slender, slithering, stretching toward him from the corner. Fingers like smoke, eyes glowing faintly red. The servant screamed. "It's them, the darkness, the shadows!" Jonathan swung the lamp. The shadow recoiled, shrieking with a voice that wasn't quite human. Not quite the twins, but something worse. Older, smarter, patient. Mrs. Rutherford screamed again. Her husband tried to grab her, but the shadow slipped through his arm like water. Jonathan turned, spinning the lamp, trying to keep the light on it, but the shadows were everywhere now, filling the corners, pooling behind boxes, creeping under the hatch. A voice hissed from the dark, low, mocking, childlike, yet monstrous. "Mama! Papa!" Jonathan stumbled back, nearly falling off the ladder. The shadows stretched upward, curling like smoke around their ankles. Every flicker of light made them recoil, but never vanish, always returning, always waiting. The servant grabbed Jonathan's arm, trembling. "They never die. They just wait in darkness, and they will always remember your light." Jonathan's hand shook on the lamp crank. He realized the truth. The twins weren't destroyed. Not really. They had become part of the shadows, part of the house, and they would always hunt those who dared enter. A cold wind blew through the attic hatch. The lantern sputtered. The shadows lunged forward, faster than the eye could follow. Jonathan screamed. The last thing he saw before the lamp went out entirely were two glowing red eyes, just like the twins, hovering in the darkness, watching, waiting. The attic fell silent, but somewhere beneath the floorboards, something stirred, and Providence would never be safe again. If you survived this horror, like, comment, share, and subscribe to face more dark true story mysteries, because some shadows never leave.